I feel too cold. How you guys were sitting here. Second, we are transitioning from a country, discussion into a technology. Good thing is that I think everybody knows semiconductor. Here, everyone knows semiconductor now, right? So thankfully, there are things that have happened in the last few years that everybody knows semiconductor. The tough thing is that it's the foundation of everything, and there's a lot of technology underneath it. And I'll try to maybe break some of that and bring to you saying what's happening in India, what's the opportunities for the startup, and how the ecosystem will play. I at least see two people who will understand. Means Jatinder was here. He'll understand me, what I'm saying. And the local boy Rizin was here, probably. He has a startup called Silesium System from here, so he will also understand. But let's go. I'll try to put some story, right? I think semiconductor has become the foundation for everything that we do. Any digitalization that we see, it's built on what we call as the semiconductor chips. Not just compute, but connectivity, storage, memory, security, and many, many other things. The significant driver that you see in the last few years is because of a buzzword called AI that started coming in, and that has accelerated this the whole semiconductor ecosystem growth as well as the market growth. What you see in the bar graph here is already outdated. It was a graph that I created last year, and it's also outdated because the numbers have significantly changed on the positive side because of the market push that's happening because of the AI. And not just AI, but AI, cloud, edge, automotive, and many of those technology, leveraging electronics, leveraging semiconductor to ensure to bring more smart, intelligent, connected, and a better future for us. So that's what is accelerating the whole semiconductor ecosystem around us. Now, what's happening is, I said that AI is accelerating the number of silicon or the semiconductor components or chips that's coming in. It's growing at a massive scale because of the infrastructure growth that you're seeing. The kind of data centers that are being put across the countries every week, every month, and every year is humongous. And underneath it, it employs a huge amount of semiconductor components underneath that. And that's what you see is the semiconductor growth that's happening. Now, good thing what's happening is that when we build these chips for the AI ecosystem, and then a lot of you and many others build the AI, which is to connect all of those things, build an orchestration, and have an application that can do generative AI and many other things, we leverage that in our chip design world also. And the reason to do that is a lot of time. Chip design is very complex. It's long process, has a lot of constraints and collaboration across. And hence, leveraging AI for our chip design helps us to do things faster. And that's what we have been doing. So you can see the other graph. When it used to take a couple of years, 2 to 3 years to get a chip out, we are trying to see how we can leverage AI and start reducing those cycle time down as well. So AI is coming back to help us while I become the foundation for all the things AI has. And that's a cycle that we are leveraging, right? And now, how does India fit into that, right? India has been a big consumer of electronics and hence the semiconductor. The current market is somewhere in the 30, 40 billion. And the forecast is that we will be crossing 100 billion by 2030. And at the same time, the world semiconductor market will be moving to 1 trillion by 2030. And a large part of this is, again, because of AI, but not just AI, a lot of other digitalization that we are doing. How India started playing was that we realized that we have been importing a lot of electronics and semiconductor, and how do we create the ecosystem? And as part of that, you saw the government of India, along with many states, pitching in with their own policies to come up different policies that exist. And then the two main ones is what I've written here, is what we call as, one is towards the manufacturing side of it, and the other one is from the design side of it. Manufacturing for sure helps you create the fabs and the big factories so that you can take your chips design into a fab and get it manufactured, packaged, tested, and then back into your world to ensure that you can get it out to your customer or to the end system. And then similarly, design is a place where you can seed an idea depending on the problem that you're trying to solve, and then have some incentives and schemes to help you through that. The DLI schemes have funded more than 2 dozens of the startups. We have one beneficiary and a successful beneficiary sitting here, but there are many others, and not just that, we have also enabled a lot of other companies and academia with EDA tools, IPs, and many other things, so that there's a lot of ideation, IP building, and the design creation is happening at the grassroots level for the local problems, global problems, and take it to a place where it can be productionized using the manufacturing ecosystem that we are trying to create. And the manufacturing ecosystem will be multiple things. You will have the logical fab, which is where the silicon gets created, but there are specialty fabs, what we call as compound semiconductors. There are OSATs where you actually do the assembly, packaging, testing, and then there are EMS where you actually put all of those things together. So there are a lot of manufacturing supply chain that happens, and all of that come into the manufacturing. This is a snapshot of what we see. This is not the complete picture. This is only a picture of what Government of India has supported formally. There are many others which probably doesn't have the government support and has also started. And hence you see a footprint which is actually across the country, covering different technologies, different portfolios, different problem statements, by combination of Indian companies, global companies, bringing in their expertise and technologies to ensure that we have a manufacturing footprint to be able to serve the global and the local market through the design and hence the manufacturing here, right? And I know a lot of this is across many states, and there is a discussion saying whether Kerala should have this. We have a roundtable with the ministry and the other government tomorrow to talk about that. For sure, there is both the perspective of manufacturing and design, and we'll discuss that with the government ecosystem associations and the bodies to see what is the right thing to leverage from the Kerala ecosystem and be part of this map as well. Now, continuing that in India, the key demand drivers have been multiple things, right? From India perspective, the rate and pace at which the internet got deployed, the mobile connectivity that got done. So in general, the carrier or the networking or the connectivity has been one of the huge driver for the growth of semiconductor electronics. But not just that, we are seeing a lot of smart cities, smart homes, smart manufacturing. So there is industrialization, automation, the automotive, the EV coming in, the leverage of solar, and many others. So there is a lot of these are the industries that have started driving the India semiconductor need, and hence probably a product manufacturing and the overall ecosystem for us to do it for India and also for the whole world. And if we look at this, based on this, as part of the semiconductor ecosystem, I represent an India Electronics and Semiconductor Association as well, where we have put a Vision 2030 and a Vision 2047 statement to say is that what would be the driving factors for the semiconductor so that we create the building blocks, the foundational bodies and technologies and everything else, and seed it with the products and the technologies that we need to build so that we can contribute to this digital EDM footprint and the vision that we have for this. And it goes beyond from creating fabs and factories and the manufacturing hubs, leveraging the talent hub that we have been, and then also leveraging what we need from some of the technologies that I talked about, but also to have a footprint on the future technologies to ensure that if we talk about AI, it is not just about what we seeing currently in the generative part of it, whether it's a code generation and many other things, but also to leverage it for our use case, whether it is our agriculture, medical, education, and many other things. So that's the Vision 2030 and 2047 for India Semiconductor that we have. And then we are building the whole building blocks, the ecosystem, along with the policies and the ecosystem for this. Now, the scale for the challenge, before I get into the startup and GCC connection, and I wanted to ensure that everybody understands why everybody says that semiconductor is tough. One, for sure, it's a CapEx heavy. There's a lot of complexity involved. But just to bring to you complexity, right? We work on, if we pick up, you have heard of these technologies that we are creating fabs for 28 nanometer, 12 nanometer, 5 nanometer. So we're talking about technology or geometry. This is 10 to the power 9 size, right? This is 10,000 order size smaller than the human hair that we are talking about. And hence the quality of air, water, and the processes is significantly high when we go and do something. But that's one size. But if you look at it, in one chip that we use, you probably pack billions of transistors in that. Not just that, it is processing the models which has gone into, again, billion and trillion parameters and tokens. So at one side, we are handling something, a geometry of 10 to the power 9. On the other side, we are trying to handle models, parameters, or number of transistors that goes into 10 to the power 9, 10 to the power 12. We are doing this for a chip that has become 500, 600, 700 watts. One chip takes 500 to 800 watts and probably can cost somewhere between few dollars to all the way to $30,000 or $40,000, which is the most advanced GPU that you get in the market. So while we do this, you also need the huge infrastructure that we talk about, that if you have to train a chat GPT today, you need 1 million GPUs that needs to be connected and doing the processing for days and weeks to be able to get a model that can be inferenced to get as a solution that we have been looking for. And all of this takes 3 years to build. And we want it every year to have the new infrastructure and a new model and hence a new experience. So the scale of challenge in semiconductor is significantly higher. It's a multiple constraints, huge, heavy, complex, very costly, and state of the art. And to add to it, the life cycle that we go through, from you conceiving an idea to converting it into a language that the computer can understand, converting it and validating the functionality that you have, mapping it to the technology, taking it to the sign-off and to the manufacturing, getting it packaged, tested, and all of that. It's a long cycle, and all of this have an opportunity for different players. The reason I bring this up is that there are many players who come together to build this semiconductor chip, and it's a huge collaboration play. Some ways to look at it is that you need the advanced technology node, what we call as the transistors and all of that. This comes from the fab. So you talk about the 2 nanometer, 3 nanometer, 5 nanometer, you get the technology details from many of these. You also need what we call as a building blocks or the IP. These are what we can say is that we have built it and kept it on the shelf so that you can pick it up and integrate it all together to get the functionality that you want. They are also advanced in nature. You have to package all of them together so that it can be put on a board or put on a system and then validated. You have to test them. You have to put it on a vehicle, on a system, and then you need many other software, tools, flows, and other things across the one. And hence, the collaboration is across multiple players. Not just the foundry fab, but there are EDA players, IP players, design players, manufacturing, test, supply chain, and many others. So it's a huge collaboration story where you have all the way from software that helps you optimize and measure some of the circuits or the currents, to the building blocks IP, to the chip, to the manufacturing, to the packaging, testing, assembly, and all of this has multiple science involved underneath that. And that's what brings in a very multidisciplinary and the cross-collaboration flow that we have. Now, if I map it into the startup world, that's what this conference is trying to handle. Many of the startups, the way it has started in semiconductor is that break this big end-to-end ecosystem into small parts and do those small building IP development at a fast pace. A lot of proof of concept, a lot of so-called as these problem statements, as a lot of those state-of-the-art IPs, or just looking at saying, if we go and map, what are the top 10 chips that probably India will need? And if we start mapping that, what is the IP blocks or the building blocks that we'll need? What technology does it need to support? And then what other components will come along with that? I think if we break that and it's published by the association and other things, you can start looking at saying what are those IPs and the areas that you can focus on. and can quickly do a rapid prototyping on these IPs at your end. This could be domain specific, whether it is for edge, whether it is for IoT, you want to build it for automotive or a medical use case, space use case, and many of that. And then as you do that, you'll have to realize that you can only do a part of it, which is probably most of the time it is on the design side of it. That's probably is the small footprint and the small amount of money that's required. But you still need what you call as a foundry and the OSAT and the other access so that you can manufacture it, have the physical chip on your hand, and then be able to test that. And then hence you will need a partnership. And that's what Jatinder was talking with IMEC, that IMEC does that partnership for a lot of startup and the ecosystem, but we have many others in the other areas as well to leverage that. And then you will need to have a go-to-market partnerships, and which is where I think the GCC will start coming in to say is that how do you partner with the GCCs, with the OEMs, and with the big multinationals to ensure that some of these can go and fit it into the system and be part of the bigger solution and be your platform for the go-to-market strategy. Now, what many GCCs are doing, I think a lot of people tag multinational companies like us as a GCCs. We have been known for doing the scale, right? We have been building chips. Every year we do a few dozen chips. So there have been a scale of building different things, whether it's a networking, compute, security, storage, accelerators, many other things, right? So you have a scale for doing this, and many times you have moved to a place where you have actually very fast in integration. And that's where if startup is doing an agile IP development and bringing it to a platform, and then that can be used to integrate to get to a solution, would be a very good, I would say, partnership or marriage that can happen to ensure that we can scale, there is a reach out to the supply chain, and then we can do a orchestration between from the building blocks of IP to the end market, right? How this can happen? Some ways for sure, right? There is a lot of prototyping when we are building the IP, and then that means maybe we can talk to Regin later as well. That IP building takes a lot of decision making on saying what technology node do I pick it up, because the cost, because of the power performance that I want to meet, because of the end design that I want to serve, and all of that. So a lot of prototyping and an in general domain specific analysis, and hence you're saying is that can be done in the startup part of it, and map it up with what I'm calling it as a test bed or a prototyping bed, that we can leverage this supply chain from the global centers and then take it to the global centers to integrate and then take it to the market. So that could be an innovation multiplier that we can do using the startup and GCC. Now, lot of these things in India, when we talk about, we can't skip the talent part of it. Good news is that India has been the hub for the talent. There is no chip that doesn't get touched by an Indian design engineer. So you have the engineer, you have the academia, there are the right so-called as a skills, right from material science to physics to electronics, VLSI, computer architecture to metallurgy and mechanical. We have all of that talent. And the policy is aiding to build not just the so-called as the ecosystem in terms of what are the framework, what are the building blocks, but also the incentives that's available. And then the regional hub that's been created. What it started with probably Bangalore, most of the startups came out from Bangalore, it expanded into Hyderabad, to Pune, and is now expanding into what we see in Kerala, Orissa, Gujarat, and many other places. So that is driving further the proliferation of the startup and then pulling GCC to go and work together. Some examples of where the challenges comes for startup and then how you can leverage the ecosystem to ensure that you solve this, right? I'll pick maybe two of them, right? So there is always the CapEx intensive activities that we talk about in a semiconductor world, which primarily comes from the manufacturing and the testing side of it. And that's where there's a concept called MPW schemes, where you can actually put your design on, along with many other designs, onto a one wafer, and then share the cost. It's like it's like a shared hostel. Many people are sharing the cost, so you can build your IP at a reduced or a fraction of a cost, and then when you are convinced that it meets all the specs, you can get into a little volume and the bigger scale, so you can share it with others. Similarly, in the test world, as the OSATs come in, there are a lot of incubations and other research centers that was coming up, which can allow you to do some level of a shared OSAT infrastructure use case, and then be able to enable your startup idea for that. Uh, One more from a non-manufacturing, from the design side, is on the IP. The semiconductor chip design is a very IP-intensive world. The value comes from IP. If you pick up the two biggest semiconductor companies in the world, let's look at TSMC on the one side, which is the manufacturing company. Look at the revenue that it has and the valuation it has. And similarly, on the other side, you pick up, let's say, NVIDIA or Broadcom, AMD, Qualcomm, Marvell, any of these, you again see the revenue that they have and the valuation they have. And you'll realize the real valuation comes from the IP or the product that you create. And hence, the IP security or the IP safety is a very important part of this. And then how do you engage with the government to ensure to have the right patent mechanism, the IP protection mechanism, and then be able to leverage your IP for the bigger product generation, can also be leveraged using, if you go through the GCC, because GCC has built a very strong IP protection system, and we can leverage that in the startup ecosystem. So many problem areas where a startup and GCCs can come together to leverage and then take the ideas into a quick prototype, and then from there into a volume, and then into the market that we are trying to do. So in summary, what I'm looking at saying, like, I would suggest the startup focus on niche IPs. GCC is building platforms, and an ecosystem is building the talent and enabling all this growth. And then finally, what we'll see is that the ignition will happen from the startup. That's where the risk and the rapid prototyping will happen. The acceleration will happen from the GCC. It's proven and can be leveraged. And then we can use the bigger ecosystem infrastructure to ensure that it is faster onto the market. So that's summary for me. I'm open to any questions that you might have.